Can you talk about this year for Newport News in regard to homicides?
Yeah, it's been a rough year for us in our city. When we look at 41 homicides this year, and I talked to the article in the paper that came out today. I talked to Mr. DeJardin, the author of the article. We've had several conversations. We have a good relationship. We've talked a lot. So we knew the article was coming out. I was glad to see some of the references that he made in the article, especially about the criminologist, and we'll talk about that as we go further. But and he quoted it here, and I will call him probably later today and thank him because and I'm going to say it to you because it matters to me. When we look at numbers and statistics, that's exactly, I see that, but I never lose track of, and I don't want this department or this community to lose track of, that those numbers are individuals. They're family members, they're loved ones, and when we have a homicide in this city, it affects our communities, our neighborhoods, and it affects the men and women who investigate those cases. So they're individuals, and I never lose sight of that. We look at what numbers are our strategies working? Are we seeing increases, decreases? Our numbers is what are the motives? Are they arguments? Or is it people that can't de-escalate? Is it group or gang activity? Is it mental health issues? Is it, or we look at numbers, is it happening inside a residence or on our street corners or inside vehicles? We look at numbers on how many are we solving and how many are still open. Next week I'll get a briefing from the captain of the homicide division on our open homicide cases. Not just this year, but the ones that we also had last year. How are we looking at those? There are cases we could close right now. You and I could walk out of here and make an arrest today on about 4 or 5 homicides that happened this year that individuals witnessed, but they're reluctant to come forward and testify in court. And although that is frustrating from the investigation side of the house, for closure for families who lost loved ones, we also have to take a step back and remember that individuals, once we leave, to ask individuals to come forward, they may still live there. And the fear or reluctance to come forward, so I understand that. So what it does, it creates or forces us to find another way around. How do we prove this violent act? How do we prove this homicide? How do we make an arrest in this case and present it to the Commonwealth Attorney and juries? And that's one of the reasons that we invested so heavily in technology over the last couple of years to try to find some other alternative ways. It's one thing to have someone come and stand, I saw this happen. It is another angle to be able to play a video where jurors can see what actually happened. So I understand some of the reluctance, but when we talk about cases, I want to know, we have a homicide support group that we meet with once a month. Are we bringing resolve? Have we solved these cases? Are they close to solving? I believe we'll have several this year that'll probably be solved in February, March of next year that we're very, very close on, some of the more recent ones that we've had. But we track those for those type things. Are we solving them? Where are they happening at? I also look at 2 different strategies in precincts, and our city is linear. So North, Central, and South Precinct. Each precinct has a geographical area, and that's what you find most in your precinct is their area that we're going to focus on. So if we're focusing on Marshall Court, so we're focusing on the Aqueduct Apartment Complex, we've almost got double-digit reductions in those neighborhoods where we continually focus. And whether it's traffic enforcement, whether it's community outreach, whether it's walking in a neighborhood, whether it is drug arrest, that there's a constant presence there, that we're interacting with families, and you can see that impact. The other side, when we talk about our gangs and our narcotics and our fugitive division, that's focusing on an individual who may be involved in criminal activity, and it may not just be geographically based, it may be in different. We see crime move a lot. Is there displacement, those type things? So we look at strategies and how to address. What I don't want is I don't want to sit in December of 2024 having the same conversation. What I've seen in my years of experience is when we have a year that spikes, usually the next year or the next 2 years, you see dramatic drops. But it's important for me, and I hope I'm not going too long in your question, but is to try to get an understanding of what we've seen. That about 75% have happened about 75% are individuals who know each other, that are acting together, that have some type of relationship. So, example, whether it is a domestic situation or an individual shows up to buy illegal narcotics, and I open my wallet or I pull out of my pocket $100 for the $100 of narcotics, and that drug transaction goes from a transaction to, well, I can do a robbery here and make $500 as opposed to the $100, and then there's some resistance and the access to firearms. This time last year, we removed about 915 guns off the street. This year, we're well over 1,000. About 100 more, 120, 25 more this year than last year. So the access to firearms plays a role. We've seen a drop since August, but we tried some different strategies. We may talk a little bit about that. But I also want us to understand, all right, we've done some different strategies starting September 11th, and we saw a decrease from August, which was our high month in homicides last year. So why was that? All the way through November, we've seen a drop so far. In August, we had at least 2 incidents where multiple people lost their lives. One was a triple homicide inside a residence. The other was 2 individuals, regrettably youth, that were involved with some activity that resulted in a double homicide at that location. Those cases are progressing very, very well, but they haven't been solved yet. So when I look at those, although there were 2 incidents, those are 5 deaths that attributed to the 10 that we had in August. And I only say that to say that that's how in depth we break them down and look at them and try to decide and look at what we have and what are some other strategies, and is what we're doing working, or do we need to change some things? It's mentioned in the report. It's something that chiefs talk about a lot. Mr. DeJarn, he talked to a criminologist. I believe he said it was in Boston. But shootings where someone it doesn't die from it, but is shot in the arm, the shoulder, that shootings are a better indicator of what your street level or what your violence in your city looks like, as opposed to homicides, because sometimes I think he referred to it as, the word here is luck, but whether it's an inch one way or the other, a shooting can become a homicide. So how many shootings do we have, right? So we've had about 15 more homicides this year than last year, but our shootings right now are down almost 20 compared to where they were last year. Last year we had 92 shootings in our city, and we're right around 70 or 71. So our shootings are down, and these homicides that we talk about. I don't have individuals walking down the middle of the street and pulling the trigger. They're not random acts. These are individuals that know each other, that are involved in activity together, that are interacting. And then when we look at the motives, right, whether it's de-escalation issues, arguments, quick access to a firearm, and we talk a lot, and I think it's quoted in here. It's not video games. This is real life. You can't push pause or turn the game off and turn it back. These are lives, right? And when you pull that trigger, that projectile is not coming back. And what decision you make in a matter of a second, how that can affect not only someone who's lost their life, family members who lost loved ones, but also the individual who pulled that trigger. Because we're going to solve those cases. The department is going to make an arrest in that case, and as we bring it forward, that person's now life has been affected. That family of that individual's life has been affected. So when we talk about the number of homicides, all of those things I've talked about are things that we think about and discuss here in this room every Monday at 1 o'clock, and downstairs in our community room at ComStat meetings and Intel meetings at 1 o'clock every Thursday. So it is something that we're very aware of, and talk about it, and how do we address it and make a difference.
I think you answered like 10 of my questions in that one.
Yeah, oh, there you go. Good.
But did want to clarify, you said 41.
We did, yes. So in the article here, there's 42, and I believe what he's doing is he's taking one of the homicides on the interstate and is attributing it to, so at the end of the year, that will be tacked on to us.
But you haven't investigated.
So we have investigated 41. That's investigated by the state police, but the state won't claim a homicide. It'll have to fall into some jurisdiction. So because that part of the interstate falls in the borders of Newport News, it'll be attributed here. But we've had 41 cases that we're investigating. If you count the one on the interstate that's here, that would be 42. It usually gets attributed to us at the end of the year.
Okay. Can you talk about some of the, I hate to call them tactics, but
Sure.
efforts that you use to maybe get to know the community better,
Sure.
get witnesses to come forward, your walks, how
Sure.
are those working?
So I think that's important. Project Ceasefire is a program that we're starting. We're doing bits and pieces of it now. We had some training about it over the summer, towards the end of the summer actually. I believe that the Newport News Police Department has a very, very good relationship with our community. And never before that I can remember in my 30 years have I seen more of a cities wanting to take a comprehensive look, right? But here's crime, what are the police doing about it? Here's a shooting, what are the police doing about it? Here's a homicide, What are the police doing about it? We're not going to arrest our way out of those things. Oftentimes we're called after something has already happened. I'm seeing more and more cities now take the approach and having the open conversations. Now, if you talk to law enforcement individuals, it's always been that way. We need more, but now I'm seeing city officials like, what are our churches doing? What are we doing with our schools? What are we doing with human services or social services? How do we get employment involved? What are we doing with areas of condensed poverty, right? Economic development. All those things now are talking about what do we do about some of the violence that we're seeing? How does the fire department play a role, right? Could they be in a vehicle and just drive close proximity to their station? Those are things that when I talk to other cities that we're seeing different cities do. Presence, visibility, interaction. So when you build those relationships, people still may feel I don't want to come to court and testify, but I might say, that's the individual you need to talk to, or you might want to look at the camera there because this is where it really happened, not over here where it's being reported. SHOT's investment in technology, I think, shows openness and transparent, that we're able to show some of the things that the department's doing, whether we're having citizens academies, youth academies, and I do believe the younger we interact with right, we're building relationships. The first interaction, I certainly don't want the first interaction with community to be when something bad happens. So if you've done any background on our department, that's why you'll see a heavy presence at community events. That's why I think we have 2 or 3 community events that you'll see multiple officers attend. I think community policing has to be a foundation, and I think being open and transparent. All those things play a role, and does the community put their trust in you? Now, because we wear this uniform and these patches and this badge, it doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes. We're all human. If I took this shirt off, we're just like anybody else. There may be held to a higher standard, but we're still going to make mistakes. But when we do that, it's okay to say we're sorry, to admit we didn't get this right. We got a complaint here. This is what we thought we had. It didn't turn out that way. We developed other evidence. But I think that goes a long way. So that's why we interact so much with our youth. That's why we go to high school football games and are there. Students may not come up, or they may come up and talk to us. But what I have definitely seen from game 1 to game 7 or 8 is a difference. Hey, Chief, how you doing? Hey, Chief, can I take a picture with you? Hey, Chief, I scored 2 touchdowns last week. Yeah, I was here, I saw that. Or the basketball games that are going on now, whether we're doing interactions with the Boys and Girls Club that are strategically placed throughout the city, after school programs. All those things play a role. And I think that's important, to invest in our community and our youth, and I think that builds relationships. Sometimes the best way through a family is through their children. And I think any community that sees an organization focus on their youth, it's very, very hard for them. And I'm not talking about, hey, here's one event and we did it, right? I'm talking about it as a fabric of what we do day in and day out, of interacting with our youth, our community. This morning I started out visiting the Chesapeake, which is a retirement community. Some individuals that went through some training there and they missed the graduation ceremony, right? But I wanted to stop and present them their certificate and let them know they matter. Thank you for taking part. I think that stuff matters, and I think you build relationships there. Little did I know that I would get invited to a Christmas party on Saturday. They talked to me about, Chief, there's going to be the best Christmas cookies you've ever had. So although I've got a list of events, I can promise you I'm going to end up there on Saturday. But yeah, walking in the community, I think that matters. Whether we're doing a large walk after a bad event has happened, whether we're doing a smaller walk where it's 5 or 6 of us, or if it's 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, I just want to get out of the office and walk a little bit, or a Saturday where nothing's going on and I want to go walk through Hilton, or I want to walk through Marshall Courts, or I want to go interact with kids that are out in Aqueduct. I think the more interaction we have, the better. That this is not an isolated incident. And I see these numbers, and I think it's in the article, that it's not just something new to Newport News, that we're seeing gun violence across our country, and departments all over are trying to find new strategies and ways to address it. Now, I will say, we had 10 homicides in August of this year. We did some different things, some different strategies about September 11th, and so we dropped from 10 to 5 in September. So again, analytical, data-driven, evidence-based, what caused that? We went from 5 to 4 in October, and we went from 4 to 1 in November, and now we're December 5th or 6th, right? So one of the things always have worked with our federal, state, local partners, but we now have some state troopers that are invested in the department, and we've had different numbers throughout the last couple months, and we'll work with that through the end of the year. And that's something, a strategy I think will carry on into next year, or certainly I would like to do a bigger partnership in April and May. Not wait till the summer where we saw our spike this year, but do some things in April and May that set the tone for June, July, and August, and get ahead of some of the things. We'll be looking at summer programs, whether it's things we've talked about, midnight basketball. Well, can that really affect homicides and violence? I think it has a role. Can we do some more things with our Boys and Girls Club in the summer where they're interacting with kids during the day? Can we do some more things in the evening? And how do we increase our presence? How do we show more interaction in our community? What can we do different with our faith leaders? Because Newport News is blessed, right? There's a church just about on every street corner in our city. So I think it's a comprehensive approach. The ceasefire meeting that we had back in the summer was just that. It brought people from every entity of our city, not just police. There was 2 tables of officers, but the other 25 tables were made up of schools and elected officials and business leaders, Boys and Girls Club, faith leaders in our community, that everybody plays a role in the safety of our citizens. I think the mayor made a great quote, and we talk often. So if something bad happens at 3:30, I'm on the phone with him. And Chief, how are we doing in this case? What's going on? What's the latest? Is there anything you need from me? What resources? What else can I give you? But he's very, very supportive of the department. I think that's quoted here. But I know that is a focus that we're all going to have and should have moving forward into 2024. And when we sit down next year, when you and I have this conversation about homicides in our city, my expectation is we have a less number. One is too many, but that we have a very different conversation. My hope next year is, Chief, what do we do to reduce that homicide number as much as we did? That is my hope. But I'm going to circle back around to where we started. Every one of those numbers, statistics, if you will, that's an individual and a family that lives in our community, and they matter to me, each and every one, regardless of lifestyle. Their lifestyle decisions they make may come into play to some of the homicides we're seeing. If you're going to be involved in group or gang activity, if you're going to be involved in the drug trade, if you're going to be involved in robberies, the probability of being hurt goes up. But regardless, every one of those individuals matters to me. It doesn't matter about race or gender. It doesn't matter about where they live or their zip code. It's a human life, and it's a family. It's a member, an individual, and they matter to me.
And you talked a lot about youth events. Are
Yep.
you seeing, I guess, a more staggering number of teen violence?
So that's a great question. So we, in law enforcement, at least in the city of Newport News, I think you'll find it across the board, we track everything. We have sheets of, I want to know what demographic of our city is suffering or involved in gun violence. What are our victims? What are their ages? What are their race? What are our suspects? What is their ACE? What is their age? What is their race? And we also look at teens. How many teenagers have I had shot this year compared to last year? Now, right now, we have less number of teenagers shot than we did last year. But I'm still looking at that. We're still tracking that. I think a lot of that has a part. I think the Boys and Girls Club play a big role. I think the things that we've invested with grassroots have played a role. I think that I've got officers and detectives that are coaching middle school football, that are helping out with Pee Wee football. I've got a lieutenant that works with Tri-Cities football. Those role models and relationships, if you will, go a long way. That's what I want this department to be. We are a fabric of the community, not just responding to this community when something happens. We're part of it, and we embed it with each other to make things better. So, yeah, but I do believe I have a passion for youth, and one thing that I look at is certainly opportunity for young people, employment. Those things matter. Economics play a big role. And I talk to our city manager, Mr. Archer, a lot, and we look at if we look at where our poverty is, where we look at where we're getting gunshots, where we're robberies, where we're seeing shootings or homicides, and you overlay some of that, you start to see a pattern develop. So that goes to our geographical areas, and then if you even shrink it tighter, now who are the individuals in those areas that may be causing some of that crime? And one incident here and a retaliation back and forth, where does that happen at? So it just plays a big role. We're looking at a lot of different scenarios. I will say, I want to look at why are our shootings down this year? And I attribute a lot of that to Chief Creswell and Captain Matrosky of our homicide division. At the end of 2022, we made a decision that we were going, and there are some other cities, other departments Colorado has a few, and there's other departments that have the same philosophy. And maybe more do, I'm sure that they do, but ones that I've looked at, that we are starting to, in 2023, we are addressing a shooting, someone shot in the arm, leg. We're bringing the same resources to that we are to a homicide. So the quicker we solve that, we stop any retaliation, we stop trying to intervene and prevent other acts of violence. But as opposed to sending 1 or 2 detectives and then a forensic technician, we're sending 5, 6, 8 individuals, resources from the precinct, forensics, passing that information on to our schools and human services, what's going on in the family. We're trying to address that. Part of the ceasefire initiative is individuals that might start to show progression in violence, that we're knocking on the door and talking to family members, your son, your daughter is involved in this activity, and if something doesn't change, we are afraid they are increasing their probability of being hurt. Individuals that they're hanging out and the behavior that they're doing. Did you know that they were riding around in this stolen vehicle 2 nights ago? No, I'm not saying they stole it, but I'm saying that if things can escalate. So getting schools involved, we have a great SRO program, we have a tremendous, myself and Dr. Mitchell, the school superintendent, talk a lot. We have a great relationship with the school system. It's trying to be ahead of the game. We talked earlier today, if we get some social media messages, well, there might be an issue with this football game. We want to know that ahead of time and bring some resources to that, right? More than what we would just put at a regular game to squash things. And I can't tell you, walking into a football game or being there as parents and students are walking out, the number of people that say thank you for being here. We just had a tremendous tree lighting event. There's big money being invested in Jefferson Lab. We got some of the smartest scientists on the planet. We're building the best ships. We can do more. And that's what we're being pushed to do. That's what we have to do. What we can't do is just throw our hands up and, well, homicides were bad this year, and hopefully we have to look at each one individually, break that down collectively as a city, and how do we do better. Like I said, it is my belief and hope that we will be having a very different conversation next year at this same time as opposed to this year.
And are there any unsolved homicides that stand out to you that you still need information on that you want the public to know about?
So, man, that's a great question. I will tell you, our citizens have been pretty good about coming forward and sharing information. If you're okay, there's about 3 that I would like to send some info to you from Ms. King's office, because the detectives are much more ingrained, and we may have just one piece we still can't find. But I may ask Captain Matrosky and his team to send that up to Kelly to send to you. There are at least 3 that I can think of that would probably be beneficial to put some and I really appreciate you asking that. So again, right, when we talk about everybody having a role, I think our media here's highlighting some things. I think that plays a big role. And I will tell you this, there are some higher profile homicide cases that I think we're going to see some resolve to in the near future.